Kareem, I'm very, very happy and pleased to tell you that we have this brother. I've been like asking him to come and talk to me maybe for a year now, I think. Brother Abdul Latif. He is very educated in the Islamic traditional sciences, and he is very familiar with what is happening in the world. And one of the things that he has been talking about quite a lot, in fact, is the very high possibility that Dajjal will come in some form of, this being from the sky like UFOs or ET, for which we have a lot of predictive programming. And so, Brother Abdul Latif, I'll leave it in your hands from here. If you can talk about this, especially to a lot of the brothers or sisters who may not be aware that, okay, this is like kind of like being built up, especially with the recent news. I don't know if you heard, they said that some UFOs crashed in Brazil.
Came across something. But the Ummah at large concerning extraterrestrial life and its existence. Now, this is something that, alhamdulillah, to some extent, Islam does not renege, right? But there are other alims out there, subhanallah, and no one's disputing that. Whether on an intellectual level, if any other makhluk of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would communicate with the son of Adam, that our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has not omitted. Subhanallah, he's been very clear about this. In fact, if we go through oral tradition, right, we understand that the only two makhluk that would engage the son of Adam, Ibn Adam, on an intellectual level would be the malaika or the jinn.
Mm-hmm.
We understand that the malaika themselves, in terms of will, the jinn have their own will, right? And Ibn Adam, the son of Adam, also has his and her and daughter of Adam have their own will. And on an intellectual level, these three creations that would engage during our tenure in Alami Wujud, in the dunya, on earth, subhanAllah. Now, using that as a filter and a funnel, right, we have to appreciate if any other species, I'm going to go off on a tangent and let's just go back to, let's say the flavor of the hour is COVID-19. And it's quite a huge matter, subhanAllah, right, for the Ummah. Now, we understand that when it comes to something like this, which has such a drastic impact on lives globally, then there's the likelihood of the Prophet ﷺ having broached that topic and mentioned it on some level or the other, whether we have the ability to grasp that or not, whether we've been able to explore oral traditions to that extent, to be able to appreciate and understand and maybe perhaps deduce that this was maybe specifically referring to, subhanAllah, the COVID-19, that disease, on the Ummah or not, it would become clear, subhanAllah. That would be something through Basira, inshallah ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reveal those traditions to us. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam hasn't omitted anything. So what we've come to understand is that he's been very clear in this sort of creations that would communicate with us and would not communicate with us. So if any other species, for that matter, which lived in another alam, and this is very interesting because we're not just talking about the physical realm now. There's alami wujud, subhanAllah, which you and I exist in. And then there's alami jinn. And then, wallahu alam, how many other alams there are. Because, I mean, just because there's alami jinn and alami wujud, that doesn't necessarily discount the fact that maybe perhaps there are other alams. Right? And even, in fact, I mean, this is a personal position, that maybe perhaps a Dajjal is actually in another alam, a tertiary one. Wallahu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. So my position has been that there seems to be a very growing trend And I've kind of shied away, maybe perhaps publicly discussing this. You just broached the topic that, subhanAllah, you have been trying to maybe reach out to me and interview me on this topic. I'm a recluse, subhanAllah. I'll come back to this. I just want to give you some background. I am a recluse, alhamdulillah, and I shy away from public appearances or anything of that sort. But this subject matter is really important to me. It's close to my heart. It touched me. I have been flirting with this subject matter for quite a while, but I had a dream 5 years ago. I won't discuss that dream at length, but in a nutshell, it was a dream that I had in Ramadan in 2016 on a Friday. It was mid-Ramadan, and in that there were clear instructions that whatever I had understood, I should make that known, subhanAllah. So what I did was, maybe perhaps I was a bit naive at the time, and I started broaching that with people who are dear and near, but this is a fringe topic, subhanAllah, right? And I guess it caused a lot of awkwardness. And I quickly understood that maybe perhaps I was talking to the wrong individuals. So I went straight to our ulama kiram, our scholars. And I've been making an effort since, consistently and constantly, and you're certainly familiar with that, on a daily basis, and that's no exaggeration whatsoever. Trying to alert our ulama ikram and impress on them that there seems to be an agenda to stage a false extraterrestrial contact. That agenda, I think, will segue into the appearance and of Dajjal onto the global stage. Now, there's been a lot of talk about, in fact, I guess what academics maybe perhaps tout as being hubris when you discount the fact that there is the possibility of other life out there, subhanAllah. It seems that they are building us up to some sort of a contact, right? By extraterrestrial sentient beings. Now, why I feel this way and why I feel so strongly about this issue is that I believe it will be a fitna that's going to be so overwhelming, it will impact not just the three Abrahamic religions, which includes Islam, subhanAllah, but also all global religions, as well as atheists and humanity in general, subhanAllah. There seems to be a lot of talk about collective consciousness, right? And being part of a religion of love, and a spiritual religion of the pineal gland, which, interesting enough, has connections with what they aptly call the lizard brain. Now, you find in a lot of this media as well, subhanAllah, actors and everywhere else, the one-eye symbolism. That basically goes back to, and it has its roots with, all the way back to, let's take biblical reference, because Islamically, our traditions haven't been clear about what exactly the tree, if there was a fruit indeed on the tree or not. What we understand is Nabi Adam alayhi salam and Ma Hawa were not to approach the tree. Whether they partook of a fruit or not, ate of an apple or not, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. But biblical traditions are quite clear about this. And they claim it was an apple. And they call it the Amanita muscaria, which is a mushroom which has a red surface and those white spots on top of it, right? And if you eat it, it's kind of psychedelic in nature.
Oh, interesting.
Kind of psychedelic in nature, hence why you've got the red apple and the white interior. To them, biting into the forbidden apple would give you the knowledge of good and evil. Right? And we understand that Nabi Adam alayhi salam, he became aware of his nakedness, right? It's haya, right? After having approached this tree, wallahu alam what he did, and whether they ate of the fruit or not, subhanAllah. But this innocence seems to have been, he seemed to have been robbed of that, subhanAllah, right? And you'll find that the tradition of this evil and good, these two forces, seem to be at the crux of what Freemasonry is about the fraternity. It's in Buddhism. It's in many of the New Age religions. And this is what I'm coming to now, is that the spiritual religion seems to be about the pineal gland, the third eye, which is at the apex of the 33rd vertebrae, right? Which is the 33 degrees in Masonry. Once you reach those degrees, then you activate this pineal gland, which gives you access. And this goes back to now Fir'aun, right? Where he claims to be Ana Rabbukum Ala. And you find the hats and the crowns that they wear, they have a snake at the top of it. Just center at the top, literally in line with where the pineal gland is, right? And for them, it represents not only Iblis, but also the Sirius stars, I understand it from my studies. Again, if we go back to the Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very clear to us that I am the Rabb of the Sirius star. Now, if you go into and study the New Age religions, they talk about a sentient beings called the Pleiadians, right? And they come from what is known traditionally, known cosmically as the seven stars, the seven sisters, sorry, right? The seven sisters, which is close to the Sirius star system. Now, Umar Farooq, when he wrote the Chit, right, to Darya Nil, the river Nile,
right,
they were about to sacrifice a virgin girl to the river. And this is when the governor representing Islam, who was in Egypt and Misr, wrote to Umar Farooq that this is what they're about to do, because the river had stopped ebbing and flowing, subhanAllah. And in that, they were going to sacrifice, if we study it further, you learn that they were going to sacrifice it to the Sirius star. These are Egyptians. And they were taking their religion from their ancient doctrines, which Freemasons take glean a lot of their religious beliefs from Babylon.
That's right.
Egypt.
Yeah.
And in that, in Freemasonry as well, they believe in the apotheosis of man becoming God, Nauzubillah min zalik. Again, goes back to what you've got is the statue in Washington, D.C. Was it of I know the pointed up and then down as above. Again, it comes to those two forces, right? They're basically interrelating, just like you've got transgenderism, transhumanism, right? And you've got even the image of Baphomet, right, which is the goat. This is again representative of the deen that Albert Pike refers to in his letter, right? Which is the pure Luciferian religion, because you find on the goat of Baphomet, whilst he's pointing above and down, you'll find a moon and a sun that he's pointing to above and down. And then you'll find that he's got the body of a humanoid body, but a face of features of a goat on his face. He's also got his half male and then half female because he has breasts. And you've got what the staff of Hermes coming out from his nether regions with snakes coiling, and at the top you've got a sun symbolism, with reference to the two opposing sides. And what they believe is when you've got the two opposing sides, and there's harmony between them, which is why you find Masonry, they do charity as well as evil stuff that we can't even speak of, right? They find that they get harmony from that, and the two opposites create the divine Nauzubillah min zalik. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it very clear in his kalam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates all things in pairs. So it's our Rabb who creates everything in pairs, right? And not the opposite, but Iblis Lanatullah reverses that.
That's very interesting. In a recent interview I was doing with Dr. Omar, and since he's studied a lot of this symbolism, he was talking about the same thing. Kabbalah, Jewish Kabbalah, tries to combine these. Like, you have to know, the idea is, from what I understood he was trying to say, was you have to know the bad to know God, right? You have to experience both sides, the good and the bad. And so...
And for us, Islam, subhanAllah, we make a very clear distinction between the male and the female. There's no merging of the two, subhanAllah. Of course, the masculine, the man, the male, has a feminine aspect to him. But if the feminine aspect overwhelms his masculinity, then he ceases to have that balance that he requires to be a man. Yeah, exactly. And the same applies to a female, a woman. If she becomes more masculine in nature, subhanAllah, she ceases to become feminine. feminine woman that she is, right? Subhanallah. So we need that balance has to be addressed. But in their beliefs and their doctrines, they actually basically merge the two, right? And do it the opposite, where the man becomes more effeminate and the female becomes more masculine. And for them, they believe that when you merge these two, right, you activate that divinity in you, Nauzubillah. So this is the central religion in the New Age religious beliefs of these two opposing sides, which you've got the checkered board as well in Freemasonry, and that's what represents darkness and light, and merging them two, and that activating the third eye, the pineal gland. This I will be the religion of a Dajjal when he comes. Now, going back to what we wanted to talk about, him claiming to be extraterrestrial and why I believe this to be the case, subhanAllah, is again going back to the Egyptian doctrines where they worship the Sirius star, right? Now, to worship the Sirius star, right, there has to be some sort of relationship between the Sirius star and Alam-e-Wujud, Earth, right? Now, Sirius star happens to be the brightest star within our night sky. And this is one of the reasons why there's always been a tendency, like for example, the lion itself, the image, the lion isn't Iblis, but it represents Iblis in their doctrines. And you see in the British coat of arms, you'll see a lion with a crown on it. The crown actually represents, again, the pineal gland, the third eye. And which is the religion, again, going back to the Garden of Eden, by biting into this apple, you would become like gods. This is a biblical version, right? That you would become like gods because you will know good and evil, right? Which goes to, again, the checkered board, the black and white chessboard, or the checkered board in Freemasonry. That's their blueprint.
Right. And in case people are not catching on, this is a very famous, I would say, Freemason symbol, the checkerboard, right? It's kind of like his red carpet, so to say.
Yes, their doctrine. It's basically the blueprint of their doctrine and their beliefs. And you've also got the pillars of Jachin and Boaz, and those represent the sun and the moon again, right? And for them, they believe that these two pillars, which has a lot of symbolism with stuff like what you had on September 11th happen with the two towers and the twin towers and the Jachin Boaz. There's a lot of symbolism in that. But I mean, again, I don't want to go off on a tangent. Just returning back to why this individual would claim extraterrestrial origin is in our beliefs as well, subhanAllah. Islamically, Nabi Isa alayhi salam was raised to the heavens, right? And Christianity believe exactly the same.
Yes.
That he went on to the heavens, and what they also believe is he will return from the heavens.
Yes.
So if we understand Jewish faith, and this we need to be quite clear about this, and so do our scholars need to understand this quite clearly, as do the listeners, for anyone who's not aware of this, is that under Jewish tradition, they believe that their Messiah is not going to be too dissimilar to how we believe Imam al-Mahdi will be, right? Which is he will be human in nature, a mortal being, right? And not supernatural in any shape or form. They will basically crown this individual. Wallahu alam, we'll just have to see. You know, personally, if I was a betting man, I think that individual is going to be Jared Kushner, because they believe he's going to be able to do things that other individuals haven't been able to do. And it seems that he's made quite a lot of progress in the Arab world in terms of bringing some sort of like normalizing relations between the Arab world and Israel. At least the Jewish faithful, he's playing quite a huge role in that, and he's been quite successful, at least in the Gulf states, with subhanAllah. So, as I said, I want to be clear that the Jews, they don't believe in their messianic figure being supernatural in any shape or form. So, I mean, what I understand is what's going to happen is there's quite a few, there's about 30, we were told there's 30 smaller Dajjals in our tradition, in our oral tradition. And I believe that quite a lot of them have come and been, and there's few left. Personally, I believe Jared Kushner may very well be one of them. Perhaps I believe that Donald Trump may be one of them, maybe perhaps Obama, Prince William and Prince Harry, right? And these are, I think, they're gonna come along when they manufacturing. In fact, I believe this has begun as well during the eclipse, in December that we had, the Ring of Fire eclipse, and I think there's one ahead of us in June, which I think started the 7 years of tribulation. I think they're going to manufacture certain passages of the Bible in order to coerce and cajole the Christian faithful into believing that they're living in a time which will see the arrival of their Messiah.
Mm.
In that time, the Christian faithful will believe Jared Kushner or whoever else it is who's going to be the Messiah of the Jews to be their Antichrist.
Mm.
Right? And I think that they're manufacturing certain biblical passages to catapult the rest of the Ummah. And don't forget, the Christian faithful are a huge chunk of the Ummah itself.
Right.
Larger number than Muslims are. And it's a harvest. He's made an oath to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he will take the son of Adam into hellfire with him.
Absolutely.
So, brothers and sisters in humanity, but nonetheless, it seems that they've set the stage and got the wheel in motion in order to ensure that they can harvest these souls, right, from the truth, away from the truth, and into falsehood, and then take their souls during that time. After that, it seems that there's going to be, and there's a lot of technology available to them, anti-gravitational systems, which they seem to be using right now. And
I mean, Dajjal will represent the peak of science and magic, like coming together.
And you won't be able to distinguish. They've got a quote that they say, when you've got technology that's advanced so much, you can't distinguish between that and magic. Some truth to that, subhanAllah. If there was maybe perhaps we, back in maybe 100 years back, if someone showed us a technology, we'd look at it like it was magic. So stuff that we can do today. But, my concerns are that in academia, in mainstream media, in popular culture, even in terms of there seems to be a drive to push this whole extraterrestrial reality on the Ummah. Even you'll find your governments, they've got a space force now. I think Trump's just introduced a space force for the United States. And then this race to get onto the moon and then onto Mars and colonize it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Yeah, it's in Surah Al-Rahman that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has limited their ability, even jinn's ability, to some extent, to some degree, to maybe breach the heavens and how far.
That's interesting, because recently I was thinking about that the jinns might be using science now and satellites now to breach that. Meaning they couldn't go up, so now they're using these satellites to actually listen into what they can listen into the frequencies that they can listen into, and use that to their advantage, because they are not allowed to go personally like they were before. And anyway, that thought did occur to me, and I thought it was interesting. And we used to sit كنا نقعد مقاعد للسمع. We would sit in the places where we can hear. Now they have satellites, so they don't have to go up. If the technology is there, then they know how to manipulate it to their own advantage.
And the possibility, I'm not averse to, for sure. It's a possibility, wallahu alam, if they can and if they cannot. The conclusion I've come to is that I think they're going full circle, Sheikh Omar. Atheism to creationism. But I think what the claim is that, because you see from popular culture, there's a lot of, let's say for the Kalka Avatar, and they made a movie about that, the Avatar. And in that movie, you've got an individual who comes from another planet. His soul, his consciousness is transferred into another vessel, which looks like, which looks like the indigenous species of that particular planet. And then he traverses that planet, and he becomes a messianic figure for them, subhanAllah, on that planet, whilst they have the intentions of mining it. Now, when you go back to traditions, now this is where it gets really interesting. Islamic traditions, subhanAllah. is we understand that Namrud was from Sumer, Babylon, right? And he also claimed to be God, right? A very interesting correlation. He also claimed to be God, and so did Fir'aun, right? And to Sumerian sky gods. And recently, even the Ministry of Culture of Iraq claimed that one of the pyramids from Sumer was actually landing extraterrestrial ships. And he did this officially. I mean, the stuff that we've talked about so far, I want your listeners to maybe score a line under and research yourselves. You've got to look. You've got to etch out your own kind of. You're going to have your own journey, but etch out your own, draw your own conclusions. Subhanallah, right? But study this stuff. Draw a line underneath it. And you've got the Ministry of Culture there, who claimed officially that this pyramid that they've discovered was actually a landing base for extraterrestrial intelligence sentient. And just go all the way back to the Sumerian sky gods, which they refer to today as the Anunnaki. Like these kind of lizard beings. And what's interesting is that you've got on one hand a species that's lizard-like, and then you've got another species that's humanoid, and that species seems to be claiming that they come from the Sirius star system, and then you've got another species that's claiming to come from another Zeta Reticuli. That's another system. Now this is stuff that we're totally oblivious to this. Our scholarship is oblivious to this.
Right, yes.
Absolutely oblivious to it, unfortunately, and it's gaining a lot of momentum. There's a huge impetus and following for this New Age spiritual religion, and they believe in a messianic figure as well.
The largest books sold right now in bookstores are in the New Age book section.
Well, there you go. And unfortunately, we're totally oblivious to it, and we're not really addressing this, subhanAllah, in terms of Tawheed, Risalat, and armoring our Iman, because this is going to be a big problem. It's literally seeping in and creeping in. And not only is it creeping in with other religious denominations and their beliefs, and then them doing away with that and going back to maybe perhaps, because all of them at the center of it, and now we're going to come back and this, what we just discussed at the start will start making sense, is they all believe in this collective consciousness, this meditation, going through the chakras and then activating the pineal gland, the third eye. And Dajjal, we understand, is going to have, and this is very interesting now, Kaf Ra written on his forehead. If you go and study, and in fact, I believe Dr. Omar Zaid was the first person to maybe draw our attention to this. The eye of Ra, if you look at the eyebrow on top, that actually makes the alphabet, the Arabic alphabet, Ra. And the eye with the dot in the middle, if you take the dot out and just put it on top, it makes Fa. And then you've got a straight, and then it goes down and it makes a curl. If you stand that upright, it's the letter Kaf. Which is, again, I'm not making it up. It's actually there for an individual to see.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the eye of Ra it represents Horus, and it's the sun god, and he's the child of Osiris and Isis. The
other thing that Dr. Omar told me in one of the interviews that I thought was very interesting, the eye, right? He said that the first, like, you know how the Quran says, "Qaba qawsayni aw adna," right? This again to the Najm, right? So the Najm is also important in this regard, that it has to do with Isra wal Miraj, which is Jerusalem. Okay, so I mean, this is where the Prophet went up, right, from Jerusalem. So there are a lot of interesting connections. Also, you might be interested in knowing that Surah Al-Najm is connected to Surah Al-Isra or Surah Bani Israel, in a sense that these are the two surahs that talk about the ascension of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the point that he made that was very interesting was that he was saying that the first bow, so to say, the first part of the eye represents the other world, and then the second represents this world, meaning the eye. So people that show this are trying to show that we're connected to the unseen, right? But what they're not getting is that they're connected to the wrong unseen, not the correct one.
Yeah. And the wrong unseen actually exists. And my concern is that that alam, as Ibn Adam falls short of their responsibility, which is the Khilafah. And when I'm referring to the Khilafah, I'm referring to the delegated responsibility given to the son of Adam over creation, subhanAllah. And we're falling short of that. And the more dhulm is increasing, it seems that alam is becoming more heavy, it's becoming more prominent, it's basically becoming it's overwhelming our reality. And it seems that reality may in fact cross over into ours, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a parda, right, a veil between us and that reality. But that reality seems to be manifesting more and more as we fall further and further from grace, right? But when I say grace, I'm referring to, again, our khilafah, and that was given to us, which is a delegated responsibility to the ummah at large, subhanallah. So the more zoom that increases, and the more
it's like the injustice is breaking the barrier.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so when the injustice reaches its peak, and in that chaos, everyone's looking for a Messiah, and then here he comes. I have all your solutions, and I have everything for you, and I have food for you, and I have everything for you.
Because the ummah itself will be traumatized mentally. And if you traumatize a ummah and make sure that they've suffered enough, then what you can do, and this is what they do in other black ops, where they basically compartmentalize the mind by making the individual suffer and traumatize that individual. And then they create a blank canvas, and in that blank canvas, then they can impress on them, they can coerce them, they can influence them, right? You become that much more susceptible to that sort of influence. Now, they need to create that en masse, and what I understand is going to be, and when I referred to biblical passages earlier on that they're manufacturing, is going to be a World War III, right? And this is Malhama being referred to.
Yes.
This is going to be a manufactured war in which it's a controlled dialectic, as I see it. As I understand it, I believe sincerely that we are yatim, we're orphans as a ummah, and that we don't have the leadership. And I'm referring to now even the wazirs, the leaders of countries, subhanAllah, whomever they may be. For me, from where I'm sat, and this is my own personal position, and certainly everyone can disagree with it, is that all leaders are in one shape or form part of the controlled dialectic, or they are in a situation where they are basically unable to do anything other than toe the official line. The official line I'm referring to is now the shayateen in Ins and Jinn, who claim themselves to be illuminated, right? Which again is everything's in opposites. We know they're far from that, subhanAllah. And their illumination goes back to, again, that model of Baphomet, which has a torch on his forehead. There's a torch going out, which is the light. But if you see the real sketch of Baphomet, and you study that, you find there's an owl inside that flame. And the owl represents being all-seeing. This is all-seeing eye is so important to them. And if you go back to World War III that they wanted to manufacture, Albert Pike wrote about it. He was a Grand Mason, a 33 Mason, and he talked about how they are going to manufacture all three wars, which will then see them finally see the Muslims fight against the Christians. And then a traumatized ummah would look for a deity to adore. And this is where I believe that Dajjal is going to bring that religion of man, being divine himself, and that they created, they were our gods. The indigenous species here, going back to creationism now, so full circle, they've done Darwinism, they've removed a huge portion of the ummah away from the truth, from Haqq. Now they're ready to now coerce them back to creationism, but they will claim that the indigenous species that was here on the earth was the Homo erectus. And we as advanced extraterrestrial beings came to earth. And what we did, we spliced our gene with the genome of the Homo erectus and created Adam and Eve, And all this time, throughout the ages, we have been the hidden hand who have been guiding you and coercing you until you were fit and ready for your truth. Nauzubillah min zalik. This, I believe, is going to be the claim when Dajjal comes and claims to be God himself. What they'll claim is, going back to now that story of the avatar, right, and playing the role of an avatar where your consciousness enters a vessel, Nauzubillah min zalik. This is what they're selling to the public at large, by the way. And we're oblivious about this. He will claim that the angels that Nauzubillah min zalik, again, a falsehood, a absolute, I need to be clear about this, and I need the listeners to understand this as well. If indeed, if I am right, then the false claim, and I'm going to repeat this again, the false claim is going to be that they were extraterrestrial sentient beings were actually, they were what we understand to be the angels that came to Maryam alayhi salam.
Right.
They artificially inseminated her with a fetus. That fetus, then they, as in, they will say that we basically placed the soul into it, like avatar. And then that particular child that was developing in the womb was destined to be what the Christian world knows to be Jesus, what we understand to be Nabi Isa alayhi salam. So they will draw Islam into this as well, subhanAllah. It was us all along. We were the angels. Understand that Dajjal, when he comes, he's going to have jinn with him. Right? Subhanallah.
Yes.
So that alam is going to cross over to ours. And so is the alam that the Dajjal is in. Now, there's one thing that I disagree with. One of our scholars, who, subhanAllah, is a pioneer, and we've heard a lot of our, and I understand you're also a great fan, just as much as I am. I've been following him maybe perhaps since all the way back in 2006, or if not longer. SubhanAllah, I've got a lot of love from him. I've learned a lot from him, SubhanAllah.
Yes.
Point that he makes, and Wallahu alam, Allah knows best whether I'm right or wrong, or whether he's Damat Barakatuh right himself. Is that Dajjal is planning things from the veil, from the other side. I don't believe that, subhanAllah. My position is that if at least going back to what we understand when Tamim ad-Dari went to him, he would not have the need to ask if a Dajjal had access to our realm and to jinn. Then he would not have the need to ask Tamim ad-Dari the question that he asked him. And helpless and tied up and unable to influence anything in our reality. So I understand that Iblis, Lanatullah, his spiritual child is a Dajjal, and he, Iblis, is setting the stage in our Jude, in our reality, with the assistance of shayateen in ins, in humanity, in insan, as well as jinn. Now they refer to themselves as, well, they believe themselves to be illuminated.
Brother Abdul Latif?
Yes.
Your last 1 minute got cut off. The voice was not coming through. Is your microphone okay?
My microphone's absolutely fine.
Okay, yeah, just stay right there and talk.
So where was I? I've kind of lost my train of thoughts.
Just the last 2 minutes. So I think the last thing I was able to hear you say was you talked about Maryam, and then after that, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Just the last 2 minutes, inshallah, if you can just repeat.
So I believe that the claim is going to be, and during this time when they traumatize the Ummah and manufacture what I understand to be the passages of Ezekiel 38 and 39, Revelation 12, which I believe the heir apparent to that particular passage of the Bible is going to be the USA. I believe that they're one of the greater landslides mentioned in our traditions. The three great landslides, the one in the west, the Arabian Peninsula, and the east, subhanAllah. I think the one in the west is the lion's share of that is going to happen in the States where the Cascadia subduction zone is. I think they're fracturing and undermining the integrity of the topography in that particular area using technologies that are already available to them. Case in point, HARP.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they've already got weather manipulation technology, which I believe they're using in order to flood and liquefy certain areas of the soil, and again undermine the integrity of the soil on the inland. in those particular areas, causing it to slide and slip. There seems to be, going back to the alim that we were just discussing, and how they may be will perhaps cross over to ours when they actually start this war. It may very well be a nuclear one, subhanallah. And during this time, when this nuclear attack happens on a sovereign state, I believe and understand, is when they're going to stage this extraterrestrial contact as well, right? To claim that they are the intermediaries, and they're here to kind of mitigate any further collateral damage between our disputes on our attitude, and they were in fact our creators in the first instance. And this, I believe, is going to show, and maybe perhaps lend into what they call, this is a new phenomena even in the Christian faithful, is what they refer to as the rapture.
Right.
Enough that a jinn can certainly, I mean, look, the throne of Bilqis was brought within a blink of an eye, subhanAllah. So, I mean, removing certain individuals, and I know of individuals, I mean, you personally, I'm sure you personally have had personal experiences with jinn. I certainly have, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, to the extent where it's happened so frequently that now, even if it's at a distance, I can sense it, subhanAllah. And that fear doesn't exist in me at all. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, it's not doing mine, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the moment they sense that, that fear isn't there as well. Right. And you taqwa, the taharat, and you know, you're in wudu, you're in the state, obviously, subhanallah, you're not in the napak state, and then they can't obviously harm you, subhanallah, right? And we know what exactly and what to pray and how to pray and what to do and when not to do it, subhanallah. These experiences for me, subhanallah, have kind of opened up other realities, which I was certainly, again, you know, well, look, until you don't have those experiences yourself, right, it's almost like they're just folklore, right, subhanallah. And when it happens to you, subhanallah, and it's been like many years now, many years, subhanallah, I've come to realize that that alam is real, it exists, and it seems,
and it's active,
very active,
and it's active,
and we are, Sheikh Omar, far more. We can't even. It's something that we can't quantify. They are very. They take their purpose and their mission very seriously. Unfortunately, we're sleepwalking through all of this. You know, the ummah is sleeping. We're comatose. We're lemmings. But they've created this kind of reality for us. You've got socialism. You've got capitalism. And so, I mean, there's always these dialectics. And they've always kept us in that. And until the ummah doesn't remove itself from that and take a look at things from a vantage point and stop being part of, well, the pawns, really. Because, I mean, Iblis seems to be playing a chessboard, and both sides, he controls them.
Right. Yeah.
And we're falling for that, subhanAllah, right? And
and I think the proof of that in the empirical world is simply that the banks fund both sides. So, you know,
they hedge their bets, right? They hedge their bets on both sides and make sure, they get the result that they want, subhanAllah. And that's by infiltrating and making sure that they've got their implants.
And so the Muslim leaders, the politicians, they're thinking of, okay, this is what China is thinking and this is what America is thinking, but they're not understanding that there's a bigger picture on top of that. And the people with the suit and ties, they all look the same. They all look civilized human beings. There's no, you know, it's not like, you know, if you become religious, you have a dadi, you have a beard, right? So you can identify the religious from the non-religious. They all look the same. They all talk the same. But, you know, what's happening behind the scenes.
It's conditioning, institutionalized conditioning, and we've got this kind of cult attitude towards everything. It seems that we all seem to claim that we are that.
And see, the problem with the institutionalization of our ulama is that they are dependent upon the people, the politicians, for the information from which they have their understanding. But since the understanding they're getting from the people is not correct, I'll give you a very good example of this. Because I come from the same tradition, you know, and so I struggle with this, but I'll give you a very good example. Maulana Mahmud al-Hassan, who I consider to be the Mujaddid of the last century, rahmatullah alayh, he said, he gave a fatwa that the interest money you get, go ahead, take that and pay the taxes of the British and whoever.
Right.
Meaning take the interest, the riba money, and pay it back with that, okay? Later on, the ulama came and they said, no, but what about all the benefits we get? So we can't use that to pay back the taxes. Maulana Mahmud al-Hassan understood the money is being used for something bad. And so then he gave this fatwa. The ulama later that came, they didn't get it as well as he did.
We're in a dire situation in that sense. I mean, that's a topic altogether. That's another.
That's
topic.
a whole topic in itself. Yes.
You know, because again.
Then the other way that there are two things that that happened that have that I just want to add to our conversation as we continue, inshallah, next time. One is a statement of Dr. Omar Zaid on this issue, because it's a question in my mind. You know, you have luminaries like Sheikh Zakaria or Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanwi rahmatullah alayhi and others, Maulana Madni rahmatullah alayhi. And so what happened? And Dr. Omar Zaid said to me something that was very interesting, and that was that you're only going to get, I'm translating what he said to me, what I understood. You're only going to get kashf based upon what you know. Meaning, if you're not aware of this, angel is not going to give you information about a domain you don't even know anything about, right? Subhanallah. Meaning, if you don't know about something, the angel's not going to tell you something about what you don't know about, right? He's only going to give you kashf or some information in a domain that you have some knowledge. So you have your spirituality, but if your doors are not open, it's not going to come. That was one. The other was a statement Dr. Isra Ahmed has written about in his, who's his teacher of mine for a long time, Dr. Isra Ahmed rahmatullah alayhi. He said that the role the ulama played, and I say this because to defend the ulama, the role the ulama played was of the Ashabul Kahf. Their role was not of because when all of this came, right, the British Empire with their technology, with their knowledge, with their indoctrination, with their only way of dealing with that was, let's save our iman, let's save our text, let's close the doors of ijtihad, right? So that was like they were being Ashabul Kahf. You couldn't, you shouldn't expect from the ulama of this time anything more than the role of Ashabul Kahf, in the sense that they couldn't do what Zulqarnain did, which is kind of like the opposite, right? فَأَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, he followed the causes. And so in that sense, I think they did a good job, because with everything that was out there, everything would have been destroyed, meaning even the tradition would have been destroyed. So they preserved that, and they were good in that defensive position. So I take these three things, the statements of Dr. Omar Zaid and Dr. Isra Ahmed. So anyway, that was just something for you to also think about.
Of course, absolutely. No, they've alhamdulillah. I mean, we've got not just an eternal gratitude for our scholars and the sacrifices they've given to preserve the deen and make sure that the tradition continued, subhanallah, our Islamic tradition, and it's been, that change still exists, alhamdulillah, to some degree or the other. What's interesting again is going back to those, like everyone having the opinion that they are on haq, and those 72 sects that keep on being coined by everyone, subhanallah. Sheikh, I'm just going to go off on a tangent, but I think it's important that it's mentioned, especially to listeners. It was very interesting and it resonated with me, subhanallah, really did. It touched my heart. The Sheikh said that, look, because he was asked who is on the truth, subhanallah. And he said that we understand there's going to be one sect out of the 73 that will be on the truth. One. But because our thinking is quite mahdud, it's limited, we tend to think that that is literal in its sense. and the Sheikh, what he said was superb. It was absolutely, so it really, really did resonate with me. And what he said was, there are people who are in i'tidal, and you've got extremists in every sect. There are those who are, and then watered down and cavalier about their beliefs as well. And then you've got those who take the middle road, the radical middle way, subhanAllah, who are on Quran and Sunnah, right?
I like the term radical middle way.
Yes, subhanAllah. Now,
Yes.
and are on Quran and Sunnah, right? They are on Quran and Sunnah. And then you've got an element within that particular sect which is more extreme and more aggressive, right? Which is contrary to the teachings of the Prophet. And what we're taught, subhanAllah, what he said was, how do we know that that sect isn't some people who are on the radical middle way of this particular sect, and then some from this, some from this, some from this, some from this, and so on, to make a sect which will be the rightly guided sect. Mm-hmm. So we're constantly walking on eggshells, and that resonated with me, because that keeps you on fear and hope, which are things you need in order to advance further, subhanAllah. So you've got, all these groups claiming that we are the ones, but subhanAllah, yet you see other individuals who may be from another school of thought, and yet you look at them and you think, subhanAllah, there's something about their aura, right? And there's something that is very, very, mashallah, beautiful about them. You see nur on them, you're drawn to them, you're drawn to their approach, their attitude, and then when they talk, subhanAllah, it's as though it resonates that, hold on, subhanAllah, this isn't contradictory. So long as it's not any belief that doesn't contradict Quran and Sunnah, doesn't contradict, right, Quran and Sunnah in any shape or form, is there for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to then judge over, right? And for us to turn around different, subhanAllah, concerning it, because we get that. I mean, let's just take the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and then within us we have the Sunni, and then we've got all these other denominations, and everyone claiming that they're on the truth. I believe that that's not, subhanAllah, that won't be the case. There'll be people within each sect, subhanAllah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how many out of those sects and which sect is included in this. They'll all themselves collectively will become that one sect, inshallah ta'ala. So it's always on our toes, and we've got...
Sirat al-Mustaqim is very wide, right? And in that wide road, there's the middle road.
Subhanallah, absolutely.
Right?
And the only...
And then the other way to understand it is, farraqa yufarriqu. Farraqa means to break from the mainstream.
Right.
So the differences will always be there, but then there are those that actually leave the mainstream. The farraqa,
getting out of that.
it's not sab'una firqatan. Farraqa means to break apart. So there will be groups that will break away from the mainstream, right? And I'll give you an example. Me and you, we identify ourselves with the tradition. We identify ourselves with the tradition, yet we may see things a little bit differently. But our identity is with the Salaf.
Absolutely.
Right? So we haven't, it would be one thing if me and you said, they're all bad, we're breaking away, and we actually break away from the ulama, from the salaf. That is the dangerous attitude.
Absolutely, 100%. In fact, there are guides.
Right? So that's an example of you don't break away. You stay with the
Stay on Sirat al-Mustaqim. That's simple as, and that's...
Yeah.
And Sunnah guides for that ulama kiram, subhanallah. Again, like I said, I mean, there's a lot to be said about that discussion. We'll go back to this again. So you've got these other psyops that are happening in tandem, which is like gene editing. You've got Casper, you must have heard of that. And the first clone they made was the sheep dolly, right? Mm-hmm. And that was... And for Iblis, I mean, it's not, the timeline isn't linear. He's been making effort, maybe perhaps in the last 100 years, century, specifically on extraterrestrials, these beings existing, and then cloning on the other side in the scientific world. And then what I understand is going to be the take home from all of this is that they will claim, they will stage a false extraterrestrial contact, which will lend into what the Christian faithful believe in. Again, the rapture, and that Jesus went to the heavens and he'll return from whence.
And if you read, like, I think it's called the chapter of Daniel, which talks about the coming back of Jesus, right? From the clouds, he will come back from the clouds. And then he's going to, you know, the Antichrist is going to use this language that will be perceived by every religion to be, this is our language, kind of, you know. Because it's very easy to do that. You know, it's easy to talk about Adam. It's easy to talk about Maryam. It's easy to talk about a lot of things that everyone's gonna be like, oh, he's with us.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
And
The heavens. Let's just say that they use technology. They've got the holographic technology. It seems that they've got these anti-gravitational propulsion systems. They will have the assistance of jinn as well, right? They spray our atmosphere with all sorts of what I guess is at least the mainstream call it chemtrails, which is barium, aluminum, and strontium. And those are particulates that basically can be used as projection screens of our atmosphere. There's
right, yes.
For a lot of stuff, as well as weather manipulation. But it also does. There's military papers on it that it's used as a projection screen as well, and they can do that. So what I understand, and they've done beta tests of that holographic technology in a lot of places, like China, where they saw floating cities in the sky, or they saw some horse literally flying in the sky, right? And this seems to be that technology being used. And you've seen examples, I'm sure, of these children in a sport arena kind of setup. I think there was a basketball kind of arena within their school setting. And you saw there's a whale coming out from literally the ground and splashing, and it looks so real, subhanAllah. That holographic technology seems to be very real. And for the Christians, they believe that Jesus went to the heavens and he's going to come back from whence he went, right? So he's going to come from the heavens. At least that's how people conceive it. My understanding is that they will claim that he came as an avatar. He was inseminated into the womb of Mary, Nauzubillah min Zalik, and then he was then he grew amongst men as a man, but he was one of the
Brother Abdul Latif, if you can come closer to the mic, inshallah.
Sorry. So you've got stuff like indoctrination from movies like Superman, where you've got this messianic figure who comes from another planet and system, and he's a messianic figure over here, and has all the capabilities. He can fly. He's strong. He's powerful. So it seems that they've been doing it on a very subtle level.
Yeah, and even Trump was made to comment on the UFOs that the Air Force has been seeing.
Slowly, kind of like, yeah, absolutely. And you've seen Obama being questioned about it, George Bush as well. And now you've got the British government who released these files on UFOs. There seems to be a lot of incidents happening, even the Pentagon, by the way. And then the Navy, that there's these anti-gravitational systems, UFOs, as they would call them, flying, and they don't know anything about it. Right, whether it's from whether it's enemy technology or whether it's come from another world. So they're planting that seed, subhanAllah. And then you've got all these popular, even actors to pop artists coming out and saying that they've had extraterrestrial experiences, what they refer to as forgotten time, and they've been abducted. Right, these beings are basically watchers, and they're watching us, and they've been around since the beginning of time and before that. What's interesting, again, this lends into, we understand that before Ibn Adam existed, there were other, and before jinns, there seems to be other creation as well, according to our tradition, right? So there's been a secular and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destroyed these species who have rebelled and replaced them with another. It's been cyclical, right? And we've been told in the Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that these creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were more competent, more capable, were stronger, had more abilities, and technologically maybe perhaps they were more advanced as well, right? And from what I understand, my personal beliefs are and contention is that they've been unearthing these technologies and reverse engineering them, which probably belong to other nations who are far more competent than we are, right?
Yeah.
And reverse engineer these technologies and are using them on some level or the other. I think a combination of that with Alamir Jinn and these other holographic technologies, they may very well be able to do that. It's not inconceivable that they could stage a false extraterrestrial contact. Whilst we've been traumatized as an ummah through world war, a manufactured war, through a controlled dialectic. And my personal contention, again, I mentioned Ezekiel 38 and 39 to you, that's relevant to Asham and what's happening in Asham, because according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, Turkey,
can you repeat yourself in the last 1 minute? Sorry. Subhanallah.
Okay, so going back to again Ezekiel 38, 39 being manufactured, I understand that that's the central place for that is going to be Asham, and that Turkey, Persia, and Russia will be drawn into this with their lesser allies.
Yes, this is exactly what you were saying. Yes.
Right, and this is going to be manufactured. So from how I see it, Putin, Erdogan, and Rouhani are all part of a controlled dialectic. Again, how I mentioned that Iblis is at the top and he's controlling all opposing sides, the for and the against. So Israel and her allies, and then their foes are all being controlled in order to ensure that the synthesis, which is you've got the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis, which is the outcome of that crash, is going to be a great Israeli project. I think that time is when they start the 7 years of tribulation, which refers to the pale horse right now, which I believe you're experiencing, and so is the world, right now being manufactured. And the pale horse is about famine, disease, and war. War's on the cusp. They're already conditioning us to expect a war between the United States and China, and then between Israel and her surrounding territory, the Arab world, between Turkey,
Iran.
Yeah, and Iran and USA, and Iran then igniting a war, because they've said that if they go to war with the USA, they will, without condition, attack Israel. And if they do that, then that's going to draw in Turkey. And I think this is going to be the means through which we may lose Constantinople, because according to Ezekiel 38, 39, although Israel will suffer a lot of collateral damage, they will come out victorious over Russia, Turkey, Persia, and any other allies that are going to follow them. Right. And I think that's being built up right now with the King Abdullah of Jordan as well, whom I believe is a good part of the controlled dialectic as well.
Right, of course, yes.
Who claim kind of, right now he's the custodian of Al-Aqsa. Right, and he will claim to be that a custodian as well. And I personally think he actually may be the Sufyan who's going to attack our prince, the Mahdi. Right, I personally think that he's going to be that because he's got a military background as well. He's supported a lot by the West. Subhanallah, his education from the West as well. I personally don't, I'm very cautious with that individual, but then I'm cautious with all the leaders at the moment in our time. Eschatologically, what you'll understand is, at least for the three Abrahamic religions, we seem to be at a crossroad, and there seems to be a confluence of a lot of things that are happening, which are ticking the boxes eschatologically for many of our traditions and their traditions as well. And I just mentioned, going back to the pale horse again very quickly, because I know we've mentioned quite a lot of stuff here, and I'm hoping that the listeners are actually drawing a line under all of this stuff, and maybe perhaps they're going to research it and study it a lot themselves in depth. Refers to the famine and the war and disease. I think the disease has already started with the coronavirus. The coronavirus, going back to the crown that we discussed, that's what corona means, the crown.
Right.
And the crown again refers to the corona of the sun, which is the outside rays of the sun, which when your president or even Turkish, the President Erdogan or any other president, they'll have a star behind their heads, which refers, which is symbolic of a halo, and that references a 33rd degree Mason, someone who's ascended, knows, and attained godhood. At least in symbolism, I'm referring to. Wallahu alam, if that's in symbolism, this is what it references. When they say he's a saintly man with a ring on top, that's what it refers to, the crown. So in the British armor, coats of arms, you've got a unicorn with a horn coming out from the center, which refers to the third eye, the phallic symbol, and divinity. And you've got the same unicorn also refers to a Dajjal, the Messiah. I mean, this is stuff that you need to study, but if you look it up, this is why you'll find with the children right now, it's quite ubiquitous, the unicorn, the toy. Because they know they've got the demographic targeted now, and this is the demographic they want to vaccinate. You've got the VMAT2 gene, which basically removes your spiritual kind of inclinations, right? SubhanAllah. These are studies that are done. Apparently, they've been done by the three-letter word. Don't know if we should mention it here or not, but that department of the government are developing it and have developed it, and there's no reason why they wouldn't want to administer that in their global plans en masse, if it does in some way hinder our ability to be spiritually inclined, at least our children, because I mean that's who they seem to be targeting. The other demographics are being killed by this because they're older, right? So it seems they're cleansing the earth from this generation and harvesting those souls, because most, unfortunately, won't be on Deen, on Islam, when they die, and will be accountable for this, because I mean this is Iblis remaining true to his oath to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where he will harvest his souls. I think at the end, once they've done this through war and killed so many people through famine and disease, and again, there's a lot of, we understand in our traditions that 2/3 of the world's population will die, Islamic traditions, through famine, war, and disease. So I don't think this is the end of the coronavirus. In fact, I'm concerned that there's going to be this second wave that they keep on touting, which is going to be far more aggressive, incredibly more aggressive than what we've seen so far. Probably
I think so. And I think that'll have a double psychological effect, because it's like just as things got better, boom.
Imagine the trauma now, because
I don't know what Allah plans to do in all of this, but this is certainly seems their plan.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is certainly the best of planners, but in their plan, and we can't say anything for what the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. But what we can do is hazard against.
Because I do think that this coronavirus didn't give them the full results they were expecting.
I think that it's been set up in place in order to, again, create that sort of fear, psychologically condition everyone, so that we would then serve ourselves up for this vaccine. The vaccine, I understand, they will show that the actual virus has mutated. So the vaccine that all the world and every other country has been developing so far is obsolete. Because the virus is mutated. But then what I think is, as a synthesis, they're going to offer the solution, which is going to be a nanotechnology vaccine. But once they give you that, I mean, there's right now that technology, again, these white papers exist. This is stuff that we're just throwing out of the hat. There are actually white papers on nanotechnology, nanobots, being used in order to neutralize toxic cells within the body as well as tumors. I think you're going to offer that as a one-size-fits-all viruses solution. And once they've got that in your bloodstream, then there are other technologies outside which they can use in order to then maybe perhaps make sure that you don't fall out of line and that you continue towing the official line. I think they're going to use quantum chips in order to track, and then there's a lot of surveillance that comes into that as well. And I think that the children are unfortunately going to be the targets for that, and then others amongst us and the Ummah who actually survive what they intend to visit on the Ummah during this time, before, whilst they exact this trauma on us and the suffering before the arrival of a Dajjal. And I think when a Dajjal then comes, we will be that much more. I mean, just imagine if all of this happens at once, and it's not inconceivable that they haven't already got the wheels in motion to do this and achieve this. and the plans in place. And it seems like they have, and I'm referring to again now the Shayateen and Ins and Jinn. If they do this, then it will be very easy for them to stage a false extraterrestrial contact, and then this messianic figure coming along and saying that it was us all along, we were the hidden hand, we actually created you guys, splicing, because then you've got, they'll say, well, hold on, if you can genetically modify and create clones, what makes you think that you weren't yourselves created in the first instance?
Right.
If you technology.
And they're actually talking about this in some of these, you know, in Netflix. There is a program called Ancient something, I forget. But one of the programs I was watching was talking about this, is that, you know, they made our genes basically, and that there's proof that they came here and they left the genes, and you know, this whole thing is already there. They're already talking about it in that way.
Hence, Dajjal will claim to be a god, right? And he will claim to be the makers of humanity, subhanAllah. Right? And what's interesting here, and what you've just mentioned right now, is that they've made Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator, impersonal. So they will say there's a God that exists that created everything, but like throwing the dice, he just let everything to chance. And we came into existence through this reality that was created, and we were your creators. But your God is impersonal and doesn't care for what you do, whether good or bad. You're here to experience your reality, your existence, and then you'll become part of a collective consciousness, and you will ascend to your own divinity, Nauzubillah min Zalik. And this seems to be what they're selling. And imagine how...
By the way, the Mormons say the same thing. And a lot of Christian groups have this idea, and I was talking to one Christian, and he's like, yeah, I'll become like Jesus. I'll become like Jesus, as in... You know, I'll be another human god. Yes. And this is out there. A lot of them think like this. And it's become very popular because of these movements, that people now say to other people, you're God, or he's a god, because of this concept that they have, that a human being can bring his consciousness to that point, which then has to do with that perennial gland that you were talking about.
Imagine, now it goes back to Pharaoh, who claimed, Ana Rabbukum al-A'la, right? I am God the highest. Now imagine the final insult would be for man and everyone, to claim that they are divine, they've got divinity within themselves, and they can ascend to becoming gods. Imagine that. There's one worshipping another god. Shirk. This is claiming you are God, right? And en masse. And this is what I personally believe that is going to be the religion, which is going to be quite seductive for people. There is no hell, there is no heaven in the traditional sense, and that you aren't accountable other than to yourself, and you are here to experience. Evil necessitates good, because in their beliefs, Iblis is a god, right? And he needs to exist in order, which Albert Pike refers to as Adonai. And Adonai in their traditions is basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they believe that Iblis has to exist in order, and we know that Iblis is just one of the many creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creations. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Wahid, and he's Tanha, and he's Mustaghni, he's independent of all his creation, right? But yet this is, I believe that this will be the final insult. Right, and humanity will be seduced by this. Right? I don't have to. I'm not accountable anymore. Yeah, that accountability is gone. Right, I can do as I please, and this is central to their beliefs: is "Thou shalt do what thou wilt."
Right. Yes.
What did the Nafs say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yes. Right.
I am.
I remember reading some New Age book which actually said that exact frame that you, that phrase that you just said. Yeah, you will do what you will.
And that's the religion of the New Age spiritual kind of this New Age religion that's out there. And with that, they also, I mean, you see Prince Harry touting this whole I am.
Yes.
And what did the Nafs say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he was removed out of hellfire? Well, first it was asked, who am I? And what was the response to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Yeah,
I am.
I am. Yeah, I am. I.
I am. Right. And I am basically means 33 degrees, becoming God. again, is the apotheosis of man.
Wow, subhanallah. That's an interesting connection.
Shouting that I am in the Invictus Games. And the Invictus Games is about, traditionally, goes back to gods fighting. They refer to themselves as demigods. And you know,
Allah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you right now. Yes.
Okay, so when we're basically consummating with our partners, our wives, subhanallah, we pay for protection from shayateen, and then we approach our wives in that sense. For them, they invoke them, and they actually have them enter and possess their bodies, and because they believe them to be gods, they believe that when their child is conceived, it's
half human, half God.
Where Hercules and all the traditions come from. Or you've got Europa, right, which is named where the name Europe comes from, which is a bull. Interesting enough, because we know where the bull stands in terms of our tradition, and they worshipped in the time of Musa alayhi salam by then.
Right.
And you've got a bull that seduced Europa. I mean, sorry, and conceived a child, and that child was considered half God. They believe that they then would ascend, and this is where these bloodlines as well, and Canaanites and all of that comes from. It's rebellion, and they do everything in reverse, invoking these individuals. So they have their beliefs, they understand, and they know themselves. The shayateen and ins and jinn know that Dajjal isn't God. Again, we keep on thinking that they will worship the shayateen will worship Dajjal as God. No, they know that he is just, call him the Grim Reaper of souls for Jahannam. He's just there for his mission, right? And they will support him for that mission, right? But they themselves believe that they will become gods, right? And they are, or they've ascended to that kind of godhood, which again goes back to all these spiritual religions, Buddhism, the dot in the middle in Hinduism, the 7 chakras. This is what all those traditions go back to. And beings, I think, will claim that we revealed those traditions to different tribes and different nations according to who they were, and gave them their traditions. But now you are all collectively as a human race ready to find out what your truths were. We had to mitigate whilst you were going through this war in order to make sure you don't annihilate one another. And now you're ready to know your truth, and that is that, guess what? We actually created you. We terraformed this planet. We came to this planet. We planted the seeds, and you were those seeds. And in the biblical tradition, the Garden of Eden wasn't in the heavens. They believe it was on earth.
Right. Yes.
Right? And for us, we were clear that it wasn't on earth, subhanAllah. In fact, Iblis fell from grace, right? What's interesting is that I believe that the claim, and you see this in movies, subhanAllah, where they claim that other extraterrestrial beings came here. There's one called, it's not coming to me, but they were extraterrestrial. It's even a god that they refer to as a god, knows of Zalik. His name's not coming to me, but he's a light bearer, if you can recall that. Anyway, that movie came out, and these huge beings who were humanoid, and apparently it turns out that they were planting the seed that they came to Earth, right? And then we went to find out who these beings are and tried to follow them on their planet, because they were going to destroy the planet. So there's a lot of this kind of effort towards extraterrestrial beings existing, and now it seems it's all coming together with these types of UFOs, with the government in USA and then other governments globally. You had orbs come down in Israel above the dome.
So
it was covered by the mainstream media in the US, everywhere else, subhanAllah. Yeah. And then we've got our traditions, and they're trying to connect them.
Which I found very interesting, because, there seems to be this, like, the jinns, they want this power, right? Yeah. And this is the place where the Prophet went to the Mi'raj. So there is a lot of power there. Yeah. Just like Samari, he took the Athar al-Rasul, he took the traces of Jibreel and put it into that bull to make it into a godlike thing. And so now they're trying to dig and find this Athar al-Rasul, meaning Jibreel, who was there, to create, to do whatever that they're planning to do. But I think that these are all things interconnected. They're going to.
SubhanAllah, our religion is, it really does boggle the mind, SubhanAllah, how ajib and how holistically we have to look at things. And we've not even dipped our finger into the ocean yet, SubhanAllah.
Yes.
Well, we don't have the capacity to, but we've limited ourselves and restricted ourselves so much that we've got a vantage point of an ant on a rug, and we don't really appreciate the rich tapestry with which that rug was made, SubhanAllah. How it all makes sense,
Yes.
right? From a vantage point, SubhanAllah, we seem to be looking at these fibers and thinking, how am I going to surmount these? But there's a bigger picture in all of this, and we've only got a fraction of the understanding of it all, SubhanAllah.
Yeah.
Inshallah, I think our prince is coming soon, and I think that they're about to start all of these biblical passages, the three being specifically for the USA's Revelation 12. I think they're going to manufacture it, and the USA is going to suffer considerably from it. Manufactured tsunamis, I'm referring to, and landslides. I think there's going to be one that's going to, Revelation 12, you need to study it. It talks about a red dragon falling from the sky with its tail. I think that's going to be a asteroid or a comet in a sense, and creating some sort of cascading effect in terms of the oceans. But I think they're actually manufacturing this. They've got the 100 megaton nuclear warheads. There's a canyon near New York in the ocean called the Babylon Canyon, by the way, Sheikh Omar. They've used that canyon in order to use the nuclear warhead there and detonate it in order to create and manufacture. What happened in Malaysia, by the way, I think was the beta test for that technology. The tsunami.
Yeah.
It's a real tsunami, that came from a natural thing. I think it was actually manufactured using atomic technology below the sea in order to create that tsunami, which is interesting because if that is the case, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a response with that one wahid masajid which was standing. If it was the shayateen who were doing this, subhanallah, then it may have been a discussion, a conversation between Arab.
In fact, yeah, that's right. Yes, that's right. Subhanallah, that's right.
And I think they're going to do that on a very colossal biblical level to the States soon, on the Californian side as well as the side of New York. And I think that this is going to happen when the peace plan.
I think I've heard so many dreams about New York from people, from Muslims, about things going wrong in New York. And this is not before 9/11. I'm talking about after 9/11. It does definitely seem like that New York will be hit by whatever it is. And, one of my sheikhs used to say, Dr. Israr used to say, coming events cast their shadows. So before the real event comes, there's always like a shadow that comes. And so it seems like, New York was also hit most by COVID, so it's like coming events cast their shadows. Allahu a'lam. But this may be a good place.
One small thing, because I really want sleep.
No, absolutely, yes.
Which is, look, with winter, because who knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best if we get to talk again after this. But for winter, I think that they're going to, it's going to come back more aggressively. I think the strains already exist. They've manufactured more aggressive strains, mutated versions, and they will release it in a timed manner in certain areas and certain locations. I think the United States, they are going to deliberately destroy that country, and it's going to, China is going to replace it on a global stage by design. We built it.
Yeah, and if you look at the relationship between Israel and China right now, the Silk Road that they're building,
it's blossoming.
This is, I'm telling you, it's such a backstabbing to the United States for everything the United States has ever done for Israel. They are like backstabbing.
The United States, it was always about the mission of Iblis, always. And the mission of Iblis is to basically, Israel is central to it, right?
And America has to go through these problems in order to force the Jews in America to go back to Jerusalem.
Absolutely, and they're creating these problems in order to make them migrate. And
because they would never want to leave this country. Not the way things were, at least before COVID-19, or the way that they think things will be after COVID-19, they'll never leave. But, you know, but America is going to be a big victim of this whole scenario.
Vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc tablets.
Zinc, yes.
And maybe perhaps as a fallback, have hydroxychloroquine tablets. Do not use them unless you start showing the symptoms. And if you do, then they're harmless enough. They're malaria tablets. They've been around for 40 years. It's very interesting. There seems to be a drive by the media to disprove the effects of these tablets, because I think they don't want everyone to use them en masse.
Actually, today I talked to one brother. He has his PhD on these malaria drugs.
Right.
What's this drug that you just mentioned right now?
Chloroquine.
He has his PhD on that, and I'm going to see if I can get him on board and to do an interview, if it doesn't hurt his career.
Very effective, Sheikh Omar. It's been very effective. So the data suggests that it has been. I'm not saying use them. I'm saying that keep them just in case, if you can solve them. And if you do show those symptoms, despite having taken vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc tablets, which you need to boost up your immune systems ahead of winter, right? When it comes to the USA, as well as globally, whoever's listening globally as well. Winter, start taking it a month before that. Make sure your immune system has been topped up, right? Inshallah ta'ala. But if you do, despite it, start showing symptoms, then have as a backup hydroxychloroquine, and only take one tablet for 3 days only. So you're taking 3 tablets in total, and that's about it. It's harmless. It's been used for 40 years. But for some reason, the mainstream are making a huge fuss about not using it, which is really ironic. And there seems to be these double standards, because they're not using the same mentality when it comes to this vaccine that they're developing.
Yeah.
Double-blind placebo test on them, right? And they've got the cost postulates as well, which they haven't done on this vaccine. They don't intend to. So where does that kind of those standards go when it comes to? I've no idea how this works.
It's such a double standard. If you just, it's such a double standard.
Oh, you're going to inject everyone in their bodies with something that's alien to their bodies, right? Look, as far as I'm concerned, you get your immune. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created, in a natural way, the body itself has the ability to fight off, right? These kind of viruses. But in most instances, the child already gets that strength of immunity, which is unfortunate, because the mothers these days don't breastfeed their children as much or for as long as they should, which is a very, very unfortunate thing, because the harm that they're doing to that child. And then we inject them with all manner of things. The vaccine is another discussion. My concern right now just before we go right now, is just in case we don't get to talk again, is look, please just make sure you've got an inventory of vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc, right?
Okay, very good.
Chloroquine, if you can't source it, that's fine. But at the very least, have vitamin C, D, and zinc readily available, inshallah ta'ala, because I think they're going to manufacture a huge wave, which is going to come back more aggressive with a mutated version, which will attack younger children. And I think the plan is to separate them from their parents and quarantine them. And during this time, they'll probably vaccinate the children. And wallahu alam, what's going to happen with the older generation during this time. And then this lends into what you just said, the Jews migrating to their home country, because I think China and Russia together are going to attack USA when it's on its knees and it's more vulnerable. And I think all of that's about to happen. Again, going back to Ezekiel 38:39, Revelation 12, and Isaiah 17.1. I think that passages, eschatologically, they are manufacturing, right? To lull the Christian faithful into believing that they're living in the end times, the 7 years of tribulation, their Messiah is nigh, coming soon. So they'll be already primed biblically already to expect the arrival of their Messiah. And during this time, this is when I think Jared Krishna will pop up as the Messiah of the Jews, and the Christians will say, aha, that's our Antichrist.
Right,
so
yeah.
We're expecting our Messiah now after the 7 years of tribulation, so all this war and pandemonium will start, and disease and famine and everything else, which I think is being manufactured by the Shayateen and Jinn. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us all, inshallah ta'ala. Grant us all guidance, mashallah, and basir.
Mashallah, alhamdulillah. I really enjoyed this program. Don't be a stranger, inshallah.
It's something to do, but I'm very comfortable in your company, Sheikh Omar. subhanallah. And if I return again, if Allah wills, I'll return again. If not, then this, I guess, we've broached enough for everyone else to do their own research on this topic and make their own minds up, inshallah.
Yes,
There's
yes.
no, you know,
Thank you so much. Jazakumullah khairan. Eid Mubarak. I'm so dependent upon, your WhatsApp messages.
Subhanallah.
It's like one of the things I have to do every day is to look at what you have sent in all of this. So thank you so much. Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.